I hate the gluten-free movement. And I hate what they've created. It's a crutch. It's a crutch for people who are like, well, I need a little bit of this. I need a little bit of that. Do you? All right. Welcome to another episode of the Jacque Show. This is a very fun podcast. I think it's going to be really informative. Hopefully not to the point of boring you, but I think this particular topic is one that's not talked about all that often. I mean, you hear it as like a buzzword, but we don't really understand the full on, I guess we don't understand how heavy this burden can be. So the topic today is going to be talking about being gluten-free. Now, anybody that works with me knows I hate gluten. I think that it has zero place of business being in our diet. It has zero nutritional value. It triggers autoimmune disease. It triggers gut inflammation. It just completely destroys us as a human species. So I'm going to say this in a way where it's like, listen, if you're still eating gluten, you should really knock it off. Especially with your kids, stop feeding your kids gluten. But I think what's even more important is when we extrapolate this data that we're going to go over here today, it's going to be overwhelming, but there's going to be a silver lining at the end. And it's one that you probably know as a parent, as a person, as a human being. You know deep down in your soul, you know what you should do. And I'm going to educate you as to why. So when we talk about going gluten-free, now this could be seen as just a fad diet. This is one of the topics where it's like, oh, my parents ate gluten, my great-grandparents, grandparents, so on, just generationally down the line, they all ate gluten, right? And they didn't have all this, and we're talking about autoimmunity. It's increasing every single year. Every single year, autoimmunity is going up. You can blame this on vaccines, sure. Can leave us more susceptible to autoimmunity. But once we acquire these, okay, because we acquire them, we're not born with a lot of these. We acquire this autoimmunity at some point in our life. And what we're typically taught by our doctors and misled by our doctors is, hey, your mom had Hashimoto, so you're destined for Hashimoto, or your grandma did, your mom did, and now you're going to, or your dad had Crohn's, his granddad had Crohn's, and now you do. And so it's one of these things where once we get that diagnosis, we're like, all right, that's it. The script has already been written for me. So I'm just going to hang it up. I'm just going to live my life. I'm just going to take these immunosuppressant medications. I'm going to get sick with everything else. That's going to come down the pipeline because when we have autoimmunity, doctors treat us as though we need to suppress our immune system. And then when we logically think about this, it sounds ridiculous. It sounds stupid. We don't need to reduce our immunity. We need to train our immune systems on what is ours and what is not ours, right? Because we see a lot of people with autoimmunity, undiagnosed autoimmunity, and they'll get diagnosed and like, listen, I never get sick. I never get the cold. Somebody can sneeze, cough, wipe a booger in my mouth, and I don't get it. I don't get it. Why? Because your immune system is hyperactive. That is attacking everything, but unfortunately, it's attacking yourself. So when we talk about medical doctors, what's their protocol, right? Their protocol is to go after and treat with medication. That's all they have. That's the only tool in their tool belt that they have. Let's medicate. Not let's try to understand this. Let's medicate. Quick, get on medication. This is a druggie for life. I will be your drug dealer for life. That's what these doctors are saying. And it doesn't have to be the truth. And when we're talking about this topic today, it's going to be very overwhelming. I promise you, it's going to be overwhelming. But everything that I speak about, whether it's on this podcast or whether it's, with my patients when we have our consults together, we have two ways that we can perceive this information. The first way is pure overwhelm. And that's, you know what? There's no freaking point. There's nothing I can do about this. I'm always going to have this autoimmunity. I can't avoid all those foods. Are you kidding me? Or I can't believe I have that many infections. And then it turns into this issue with the whole, oh, poor me, this victim mentality. And I think what's really important to understand is the more things that you can find that you're doing to yourself that's causing dysfunction in your body, that's more tools in your tool belt to empower you, to bring you back to health. The worst thing that I could tell you when I run all my tests is say, everything's clean. I don't know where these symptoms are coming from. I don't know. It doesn't happen. I always find the cause. It's what I do. I'm a doctor of cause over here. And that's what brings that hope back. So we spin it for a positive. We have 3 infections. Great. That's 3 awesome areas of improvement that's causing and triggering these symptoms. Now let's talk about diet and lifestyle to make sure that once we eliminate these infections, they don't come back. When we have our patients that come to us, okay, and they've got Hashimoto, they've got celiac, they've got colitis, they've got behavioral disorders, right? And we're like, okay, what do we do? Let's look at their stool test. Let's see what's going on in the gut, especially with children. As adults, we accumulate a lot of stress, a lot of toxic burden. We're imperfect individuals and we're highly toxic, especially if we don't catch it soon enough, right? I didn't always live this lifestyle. We didn't always live this lifestyle. This lifestyle kind of chose us. We had to. We lost our health and we're like, all right, what do we do? How do we rebuild this? And what I'm going to teach you today is the stuff that I use for my family, my kids, as well as my patients. Okay? So let this overwhelm you. Write stuff down. Not if you're driving. Wait to do it or do some voice memos. Pause it and voice memo this. These things that are going to be going out here, or maybe they'll put it in the show notes here for me, but these lists of foods are going to help to empower you. Because we hear the buzzword, right? Gluten-free. And I always joke, I'm like, they're putting gluten-free on motor oil. Like anywhere that they could put gluten-free, they're slapping it on it. It's a marketing scheme for a lot of stuff. And when I tell my patients to go gluten-free, it doesn't mean go grab stuff that says gluten-free on it. Stay away from gluten or any gluten-containing foods. The gluten-free movement, it's great in that it allows us to have bread options and more shitty food options, really. It's like, I can't do it. Yeah, you can. Your health hasn't left you significantly enough that you're willing to do anything it takes. That's what that tells me. Your kids, same thing. They haven't been sick enough for you to really be able to do this. I've had cancer patients that I've worked with, and like, I can't pull them off pancakes and maple syrup. I'm like, you're fired. I can't work like that, especially when we have that type of level of severity in your health. Now, if you keep coming to me, you're like, I can't avoid the gluten. Like, all right, we're going to have to continuously keep treating this problem because this is a toxic lifestyle. Okay. Again, it's like coming to me and your hand is burnt. And I'm like, all right, let's put I told somebody this at my son's birthday party. We'll put toothpaste on it. It's a hidden little gem there. If you don't know this, peppermint toothpaste, any toothpaste with peppermint in it, lather it on any burn you get. No burn, no blister. Like overnight. It's awesome. All right. Now you don't have to keep it on overnight. Put it on there for like 15, 20 minutes. Wash your hands. You'll be good. Anyways, so say we do that. We're like, all right, cool. We took the sting away. Your hand's healed. You're good to go. Next day, you wake up. You're like, yes. And you burn it on the stove again. You're like, hey, doc, look, I'm burnt again. What do I do? I'm like, well, bro, like stop putting your hand on the freaking burner. You're burning yourself every single time. It's guaranteed every single time. You're like, well, can I just use the toothpaste again? Yeah, I mean, if you want to, but why don't you want to stop the pain? Why don't you want to stop that process from taking place? Right? So this is going to help to give us the empowered movement that we need to understand what gluten-free truly means. Anytime you work with me, one of the number one things I'm going to suggest is a whole foods diet. We have different apps and things that we use that already have a lot of things pre-programmed in it. And if you're like, hey, let's do, I don't know, give me a diet for, I don't even know. It's going to be gluten-free, dairy-free, corn-free, soy-free, no matter what diet that I give out there. It's guaranteed to have those. And obviously no processed sugar, but that's kind of a given when you're going to a health provider. Your medical doctor should also be well aware of that. It's going to be another podcast that we do, right? So when we're talking about this, it's really important to know that we have to understand that this could be hitting us right now, but it can also be hitting us, not just in a moment, but 3 days after, right? A lot of people walk around with headaches. A lot of people walk around with migraines, infertility. And a lot of us are gluten sensitive. And a lot of that goes undiagnosed. How many people reach out on TikTok? They're like, I'm not having proper bowel movements. I've got constant headaches. We could talk about the random food avoidances, avoid these things. It's like, okay, yeah, I'll try that. Well, then there are these hidden ones where you're like, oh, I'm gluten-free though. I eat gluten-free stuff. Do you? Or do you eat stuff that's trying to be like it's gluten-free? Just like the vegan movement, right? I eat the Impossible Burger. Well, it's impossible for that to be healthy because it's just shit in a burger patty to try to make it seem as though it's meat. It's not healthy for you. It's a lie. It's a fallacy. Right? And this is something, we'll dive into this real quick, but this is something that we have to be really aware of because they're trying to push farmers out of being able to do what they do. Right? Regenerative agriculture is one of the quickest ways to reduce our carbon footprint. All right? Helps against climate change. They're trying to stop that. They want to have everything processed in plants by Bill Gates, the largest landowner for farms. That is scary. Very scary. And they're trying to push up the price of everything else so that our meats this fall is going to be incredibly expensive. So I advocate for you. Get a gun, get a bow, get out there, learn how to hunt safely. If you need help, my buddy Jeremiah Berta is going to be doing some stuff on TikTok, little tutorial videos, and you could reach out to him. He's happy to help. He loves doing it. He's like my guru for the woods. Okay. So let's just get right into this. And by right into it, this has been 11 minutes of talking and we're getting after it. So I guess that was just kind of like a warm lead up to what we're going to get into. I think what's really important to note is talking about the severity of this. Okay. So this is the autoimmune movement has been rapidly increasing. And right now, according to statistics, we've got about 23.5 million people, Americans, who are diagnosed with autoimmunity. Autoimmunity in any naturopathic or functional medicine or chiropractor, most doctors even too, miss the autoimmunity piece because they don't know what the hell's going on. So we have the 23.5 million, but I guarantee you we have more of that with active autoimmunity that have not been diagnosed by a medical doctor, which would then be put into these statistics. I work with patients who know that they have autoimmunity just innately. They're like, yep, I've got autoimmunity. I confirm it on my proper testing, and then we treat it. It's reversed, and we're good to go, right? It's not hard. Once you figure out this stuff, it's not hard. And here's the kicker. When we work with autoimmunities, they're like, hey, can you make it stop for good? And you got to reverse the question and say, can you make it stop for good? Because these dietary choices, this lifestyle choice, this isn't just an in the moment thing. It's not just treat it and quit it. Okay? It's not treat it and quit it. It's treat it and continue. Otherwise, if you keep going back to the same lifestyle that made you sick to begin with, it's just going to come back again for you. Prime example, I had a patient, I think she was 19, back in Pittsburgh. She came to me, she had colitis outbreak, and she had mucus, blood, everything in her stool, right? It was horrible for her. She couldn't eat, couldn't do anything. Got her healed up, and I think it was like 2 months while she was home for the summer. Went back to school, quit everything that I told her to do, came back for the winter time, and then came with the same symptoms. And they were like, well, what happened? I'm like, well, what have you been doing? You're stressed at school, eating horrible cafeteria food. You're drinking alcohol when you're not even of age to drink alcohol. And all these symptoms come back. So this fallacy, this mindset that diet has nothing to do with anything, which is another thing that everyone's trying to push. Medical doctors, Fauci's, the idiots out there are trying to push. Diet doesn't have to do anything. Food is medicine. It really, truly is. So you have to understand this. Either we're feeding ourselves for health or we're feeding ourselves for disease. The choice is yours. You decide what you put in your mouth. Every single time you do it, you cognizantly decide. Now, are the marketing companies doing an amazing job of trying to get the food in your house? Yes, they are. Do they also put stuff in the food that makes it highly addictive? Yes, they do. So detox it. Quit for 2 weeks. Empty out your pantry. Burn it in the backyard safely. If you're in Arizona, be careful. Drought warnings. I know we got monsoon rains, but just be smart about it, right? Get rid of the shit. Get it out. Because if it's in the house and you're going through your withdrawal symptoms, which you're guaranteed to do, then you're going to get weak and you're going to go back. And then you're going to be chemically addicted to it. This is where it becomes important. Now, for the quote unquote average person, most inflammatory foods are out of the body in about 2 to 3 days. Okay, the inflammation. This is why when we run a food sensitivity panel, somebody can eat something horrible on Sundays, like they go to church and there's a big potluck. They'll eat a bunch of dairy. Then I'll meet with them on Monday. And they're like, Doc, I feel terrible. Like, what'd you eat yesterday? I know those patients, right? Because they're willing to sacrifice their health for the convenience or for the fear of confrontation of somebody else or just sticking out, right? Because nobody wants to be, singled out and ask questions, where questions build influence, and you can either perceive it as somebody is judging you, or you can perceive it as, this is my opportunity to improve somebody else's health, and they don't have to pay a dime for it. We had our party this weekend. Our son turned 4 this weekend, and we had gluten-free, dairy-free, everything. Cake, cookies, wraps, the food that we got catered from True Food Kitchen, which if you live in the Scottsdale, Phoenix, whatever area, if you haven't eaten at True Food Kitchen, get your butts down there and eat. The service is always amazing, and the food is freaking delicious no matter what you get on the menu. I'm telling you, it's to die for. But we had people who know of how we raise our kids, both Hoyt and Sage, no dairy, no gluten, no sugar. And they're like, did I hear you say is this gluten-free? And we're like, yeah, gluten-free, dairy-free. They're like, okay. Boom, eat it, right? That's awesome, because they felt like they were going to be an outsider. We made them feel like an insider. We also had the opportunity to show people, like, listen, you can have people make healthy versions of the gluten-free, dairy-free stuff that doesn't have all the processed garbage in it. Yeah, there's going to be some sugar, and yes, sugar is inflammatory, but he gets it maybe once a year, twice a year. That's basically it, right? Or he'll get sugar from like honey or something else of that nature. So don't be afraid to stick out, I guess, is another important thing. Anyways, going back into it, the average person, about 2 to 3 days. So again, if you're somebody out there and you've got migraines and you're like, man, like I get migraines all the time. And I'm like, well, what do you eat? And they're like, well, I ate good today. I ate good yesterday. I'm like, what'd you have 3 days ago? And they're like, well, I was in a rush and I went to McDonald's or Chick-fil-A. I picked up some stuff and I ate it. I'm like, there you go, gluten. What? And they're like, yeah, it's gluten. And it's triggering that inflammation for like 3 days. And then if you're doing it like every other day or every third day, because people are like, well, maybe just a little bit, or the quote of everything in moderation, which is, it's like an addictive, it's like just a little bit of heroin is okay, right? Just a moderate amount of cocaine is fine, right? No, it's the same stuff, right? High fructose corn syrup is more addictive than cocaine. Anyways, we have these patterns. So if you're somebody who does have migraines, cut the gluten out, start eating whole foods. And we'll tell you about some of these hidden gluten triggers or gluten mimickers that are out there as well that you may also be consuming that you're not aware of. And a lot of the gluten-free stuff has one of the ingredients in it. So it's very tricky for people trying to eat gluten-free. Unless you're willing to fully commit, right? Don't straddle the fence on this. Either you're gluten-free or you're not. And you know what? I'm going to stop saying gluten-free. Either you're completely away from gluten or you're not. Okay? Or anything that would be gluten-containing. I don't even want to use gluten-free. I think I'm going to try to do that for the rest of this podcast. It's going to be very difficult because I think that's going to be the name of the podcast. So gluten-free to everything away from gluten. Anyways, on average, 2 to 3 days. For people who are sensitive, okay, and younger kids can take, wait for it, 3 to 6 months. 3 to 6 months. 3 to 6 months for you to process that gluten and stop the gluten from damaging that small intestines and messing up your little villi that's in there. 3 to 6 months. For grown people, it can take up to 2 years. 2 years to process this. Now you process that. This stuff, again, from what we're aware of, some people are just like, oh, it just sits with me. I only feel symptoms for X amount of time. We don't feel autoimmunity building in our body. We don't feel cancer growing in our body. We don't feel a lot of disease processes. By the time we have a symptom, we have to have at least 40% disease damage and cell death. At least 40%, right? A smoke alarm does not go off as soon as the fire starts. what has to happen? It has to go systemic. The smoke has to start to rise and go up and hit the smoke alarm. And then if it's wired through the house, then it has to coordinate with the rest of the body or the rest of the house. Hey, something's going on here. Now, if you're in your bedroom, okay, and you don't hear the initial fire alarm go off, but you hear yours go off, you're like, where's the fire coming from? What in the world? What happened? And then you have to investigate. Where is it coming from? What caused the fire? How do I put it out? So when we're talking about these statistics, these are things that you need to avoid. And not just for the moment, you need to avoid for life. If you want to be healthy. Not if you want to treat an autoimmune disease. Yes, 100%. But if you want to be healthy, gluten has zero business being in your diet at all. I don't care who told you, what doctor, what friend, what farmer, what ancestor tried to communicate to you and say, gluten's good. Bullshit. No, it's not. My son knows that. It'll hurt your brain or hurt your belly. He yells it in the grocery stores. So people are grabbing loaves of bread. He asked yesterday, there was a little charcuterie thing that was really good. And he asked if he could have this little piece of like cracker thing. I honestly don't know if it was gluten-free or not, but he came over and he goes, hey, is this gluten-free and dairy-free or is this going to hurt my belly? You were like, I don't know. It's probably going to hurt your belly. And he goes, okay, throws it in the trash and moves on. So for the parents out there who are like, well, I can't do that for my kid. Bullshit. You're not willing to do it for yourself because you'll be a hypocrite trying to tell your kid not to eat it while you're sitting there pounding down 10, 15, 20 pounds of gluten every single day. It's not that you can't tell your kid. It's that you're not willing to sacrifice what you've been doing your entire life that made you sick for your kid. Sit with that one. The gluten-free movement or the absence of gluten in the diet is very important to understand. Yes, it triggers autoimmunity. Yes, it triggers inflammation. Yes, it triggers dis-ease in the body. Every single disease process or a dis-ease state starts with inflammation. So if you're eating gluten, is it going to cause inflammation? No or yes. Or I should just say yes or yes. Yes. How many times? Every time. This isn't, Sex Panther? It doesn't work 60% of the time every time. It works every time it successfully causes inflammation in your body. So again, if you want to be healthy, you avoid the gluten. Hands down. No questions asked. I don't care if you're like, well, I had some last week. I'm good. I only have a little bit a month, or I have a vacation meal or a cheat meal here or there. Look at the statistics. Look at the research. It isn't just in that moment that you eat it. You're building disease for like 6 months to 2 years after you consume gluten. Is that something you're willing to do? Because at some point when you're diagnosed with autoimmunity or you're diagnosed with cancer, if you have a good doctor, they're going to tell you then, get away from it. So either you do it now or you do it when you're almost dead. What do you want to do? I think I could get really fired up about this topic. It's almost worse than vaccines for me. I hate the gluten-free movement. And I hate what they've created. It's a crutch. It's a crutch for people who are like, well, I need a little bit of this. I need a little bit of that. Do you? You have zero. You lack discipline. Was that Arnold? You lack discipline. Seriously. Okay. So now let's go into this stuff. What can mimic gluten? The top one that I think a lot of people know about, but don't really want to admit is corn. Not just like the high fructose corn syrup, the bad stuff, even if it's just your quote unquote non-GMO corn, whatever it is, which pretty much all corn is GMO now. There's like no corn seeds that are not GMO. It's going to trigger a very common or very similar reaction to gluten, okay, or gliadin, which is the component inside gluten that causes inflammation of the body. So if you say, I'm gluten-free, but you're pounding down corn chips, or you're having tacos, no, you're not. Corn tortillas, no, you're not. Or like, I cut out all the gluten and my rosacea comes back every once in a while. I don't know what's happening. My lupus comes back. I don't know what it is. Did you have some corn? Oh, Taco Tuesday, right? Or Tequila Thursdays. And I had that. Like, we're like, oh, shoot. I didn't know that. Because why? Because we're not being told that. So corn is one of the top offenders. It's also one of the top, quote unquote, gluten-free foods. Tons of research on it. Mimics the gluten. Okay, so avoid. The next one. This one's harsh. Rice. Why is it harsh? What are most products that are gluten-free made with? Brown rice flour, brown rice syrup. Probably one of the number one ingredients in most gluten-free things that say gluten-free on the bag or on the label. Rice, brown rice. So what's it do? It contains something called, okay, it's FPIES. And it's food protein induced enterocolitis, or in layman's terms, inflammation to the colon. So it mimics it, and it causes its own form of colitis to your gut. Is that good for people with gluten intolerance or gluten sensitivity? Is it good for the general population? No. And what's important to know, right? So the gluten sensitive people, they're just more reactive to the inflammation that's caused from these compounds. It doesn't mean that if you don't have a tested and verified gluten sensitivity, it doesn't mean you're completely immune to the inflammation that it causes. So this whole topic isn't for people with gluten intolerance, gluten sensitivity, celiac, the more aggressive people. This is for your average person who's sitting there like, you know what? I want to be healthy. What do? You're going to cut all this gluten crap out. And this is what we're building up here. Okay, so number one, it's corn. Get rid of it. Number two, your rice products, brown rice, white rice, etc. Plus, rice is also pretty high in different heavy metals. So you do want to sparingly eat that because it's just going to cause more inflammation in your body. Okay, so another reason why you may still be having flare-ups is, hey, I've got celiac. I'm eating gluten-free, but I'm having corn tortillas and gluten-free bread instead of, normal bread for breakfast. Right? Because when we think gluten-free, we're typically like, oh, cool, just avoid wheat. Really? What about the barley, malt, rye, millet, amaranth, sorghum? Right? Who's telling you that? Your functional practitioners, people who actually do the damn research. This is key information. You need to know this. What about oats? Super common question I get. What's the difference between gluten-free oats and regular oats? Oats by nature, they don't contain gluten. But what they do is they're found in a lot of cross-contamination reactions where oats themselves are kind of like a sticky-ish substance. So it has like the static cling to them. So when you mix it on machinery that contains gluten or in the harvesting process to get the oats, they're not cleaning the equipment, etc. It's going to get cross-contaminated. You're going to have some gluten that's going to be crossed over into those oats. So be really careful with that. And if you are going to go for oats, pay the extra $1, whatever it is for the bag, and go gluten-free for the oats. It's just to hedge your bets, okay? Or cut them out entirely, but we're trying to be as strict as possible with this type of avoidance, okay? Next one is going to be millet. Okay, millet is another one. It's found as like a grain. They use it for flour, millet pancakes people will use. And it has a type of gluten protein in it called panisin. Okay, so gluten protein, so it comes from gluten, so it also has gluten in it. Did your doctor tell you that? Probably not. Sorghum has one called kefir, or kefir, however you want to pronounce that one. But sorghum is another one. So sorghum flour, found in a lot of things, a lot of baked goods. Barley, this one ticks a lot of people off. a lot of people, because there's a company called Barley Life. All their products contain barley. All their patients test insanely high for anti-gliadin IgA, which is the antibody reaction to the gliadin that's found in gluten. And they're like, where could this be coming from? Like, well, all of those barley greens that you're trying to be getting in there contains barley, you're getting wheat. So you're not gluten-free. You're not eating healthy stuff. So barley greens, you probably just need to cancel your business model and start with something fresh. Go with like an Organifi or something, or even Designs for Health that doesn't have any gluten-containing compounds in it. Okay? Because, sorry, Barley Life, but you really missed the boat on that, especially with over 23.5 million Americans with autoimmune disease and even more with gluten sensitivity. Bad business model there. And I will call you out because I'm tired of your damn products. Okay. Anyways, on to the next one. Rye bread. Some people use that as an alternative, right? Where they're like, oh, I don't do wheat bread. I do white bread, right? Please look at the label. What is white bread? It's bleached wheat. It's worse. And it's more of a simple sugar, starchy sugar. So it's going to spike your glycemic index even more than wheat will. Your bran cereals, your fiber cereals, your basically all cereal, which is what we're feeding our damn kids, are going to contain some form of wheat. Parents, we need to be better, right? Because I get fired up because I don't want my kid to have to tell your kid that they're hurting themselves, because he's going to do it. He's just turned 4. He's very extroverted. He's very opinionated. He knows his stuff. He's going to tell your kid to tell you to stop serving you that stuff. And I'm freaking proud of him for that and having that stance, because he knows better. And this isn't, people are like, oh, you're brainwashing your kid. No, I'm educating my kid based off of actual scientific research on how to be truly healthy. If you want your kid to be sick and you want to continue to pay your kid's medical bills because he's getting ear infections, chronic disease, he has no immune system, he's getting cancer, now he has an autoimmune disease or type 1 diabetes, you're like, I don't know what happened. You fed him shit from birth. Take personal responsibility in that. I get fired up enough to say, and I'll tell Megan, I'm like, listen, somebody needs to call CPS on that family for what they're feeding that kid. You'll have obese children walking around with 15 pounds of McDonald's and burgers and crap food. To me, you don't deserve to be a parent. You're poisoning your child and you're setting them up for failure later on in life. I am that excessive with this stuff. Okay. If you ask my opinion, you're going to hear it. I'm not going to shove it down your throat, but it really upsets me because I love kids. I want this entire world to be as healthy as humanly possible. I don't want people to think that they're dependent on the medical system, but it's a beautiful model. Let's feed them cereal for breakfast. Let's give them a ham and cheese sandwich for lunch. Let's give them some sort of pizza for dinner. Let's give them some sort of chicken nuggets. Wheat. How do we not suspect? Like, how could we even think that our kids aren't going to get sick from that type of diet and lifestyle? Oh, and we'll put our kids in sports and we'll feed them Gatorade with artificial everything and shitty sugar. Now my kid has ADHD. Really? Does he? Does she? Really? No. And for the adult, and this might upset some people, for the adults who are diagnosed with adult onset ADHD or adult ADHD, when I was in school, sounding old, when I was in school, it wasn't possible. You had to be diagnosed with ADHD prior to entering the classroom, which means you had like 6 years to be diagnosed with ADHD. And then we strap you in a classroom and say, don't use your energy. I'm going to make you sit and focus with all these books. Also, you now have school lunches, which is going to poison you. Also, we're going to give you Gatorade. Oh, we live in Arizona. Let's give even more Gatorade because they're dehydrated. There's plenty of other health alternatives. You could do coconut water. It has plenty of electrolytes in it. You could do the elements, little like salt, potassium, magnesium packets. You could do Numa, which is another coconut water-based product. There's so many things. You can, instead of Pedialyte, you can use Kinderlite. There's so many things if you're willing to search for it. Okay, and this can be overwhelming, but I want you to listen to this and I want you to sit down. Maybe if you're in a car, listen to this again, start taking some notes on this, because it's our responsibility as parents, as people, as humans to protect ourselves and protect this world. We want to talk about also reducing pollution. All these pharmaceuticals that we're taking, they're going to go through and a lot of them are excreted through urine. And then they're going into our drinking water. So then we're cross-contaminating our neighbors with the poison that we're putting in our bodies because we're putting other poison in our bodies from our food, which is then making us reliant on medications. Do you see how the system works yet? It's beautifully designed. It's a beautiful, beautiful business model. It really is. And the advertising that goes along with this is years of brainwashing people to be this way, men to be super stubborn. We don't want to change unless we lose a leg. And then we're like, oh, well, maybe I'll eat some vegetables or some fiber, right? Most grown men are like, I don't want to eat fiber. I'm just going to take fiber gummies. I love my dad to death, but my dad pounds down fiber gummies and they're not the healthy ones for him. right? So with avoidance of this stuff, it's massively crucial that we understand all of the different areas that gluten can sneak in, or the different molecules that can trigger similar inflammation to gluten, which then makes us sick. And the list goes on. So we have something that's known as pseudo grains, okay, or products that are kind of like our grains or normal foods, again, like our wheats, those types of things. And it just made me think, Amber Waves of Grain. I'm not being anti-patriotic. I know the song has been around for a very long time, but seriously, we need to maybe edit that portion of that so we don't feel like we're not patriotic if we eat gluten, because I have heard that from patients. What are you, not American? I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? I'm pro-American, pro-health, right? So we'll go into the next one. And I'm going to pronounce it improperly on purpose. Quinoa or quinoa. Quinoa. Right? So quinoa is one that can create glutinous type issues. Gluten sensitivities can be activated. Inflammation is going to be activated from quinoa. So this is another one where people are like, well, I can't do rice. Can I do quinoa? They're very similar. Now, if you have a food sensitivity to rice, but you don't to quinoa is going to be a little bit more safe for you, but it's still going to be inflammatory. Now, some of you who are listening might just be fist pumping in the air like, yes, Doc Jacque told me I don't have to eat quinoa. That stuff tastes like crap. It kind of does. It does. I'll use like tamari or something like that as like a soy sauce alternative to try to make it taste better, or like a bone broth. But man, that stuff it's not great. What's another pseudo grain? Buckwheat. Okay. Now, buckwheat doesn't technically contain wheat, but this is another one that does have a high level of cross-contamination from different food sources infiltrating buckwheat in the process, and can then also trigger gluten-type reactions. So whether you, again, have an autoimmune disease or whether you're just working to be 100% healthy, this would be another one to work to avoid. And the other one here is going to be amaranth. That's another one that's going to be important to eliminate for the same reasons: cross-contamination, risk for gluten sensitivity. It can trigger inflammation in the body. The other one, I love this one. I'm gonna say this one slowly for you in a very soothing voice. Dairy. Okay. One of the worst foods, but one of the most delicious foods that you can eat is a pizza. Pizza is by far, by design, deliciously poisonous. And I'll say unless you're in Italy, because their pizza was, oh my God, it was so good. Anyways, dairy contains a molecule known as casein, okay, or beta casein. Casein is something that came into I think really like the bodybuilding movement. I think was the first time I heard about casein. They're like, hey, if you want to gain weight, if you want to bulk, bro, casein before bed, just scoop that, your weight gainer shake, and you get some protein and you're good. I'm like, cool, yeah, I'll do that. Let's gain weight. And I did, and I felt horrible from it. I was so inflamed, so puffy, so bloated, never saw an ab. I'm like, where'd my abs go? Like, what happened? Where did they go? It was the casein. It's going to mimic it, okay? It mimics gluten. It actually mimics it. So this isn't a cross-contamination thing. It mimics the same reaction and creates an inflammatory process, especially with people who have a hard time processing gluten. So this is another one where I'm like, guys, if you want to be healthy, what were three of the things that I mentioned: gluten-free, dairy-free, corn-free, soy-free. The only one I didn't throw in there in this was soy, and then the processed sugars and stuff, right? So you're knocking out three of these, the top categories, just by avoiding gluten in the body, okay, or gluten-containing molecules. So pulling from this is actually something that I learned doing this research for the podcast here today for you guys. Instant coffees, okay, the quick stirs, or sometimes there's packets you rip and tear and throw in there. From what I was researching, they also have gluten in them. I'm like, what the hell is wheat doing in coffee? Why? Right? I'm so specific with my coffee beans. It's insane. Oh my gosh, it's insane. Bulletproof coffee. It has to be organic. I mean, it has to be tested for that stuff to go in my body. Otherwise, you just get exhausted from eating it or drinking it. I'm sorry. And then you have issues later on. Right? Again, up to 2 years after you had one instant coffee. And why? Well, because it had that in it. The next one's probably going to make you sick to your stomach, because it's close to making me sick to my stomach from it. Meat glue. Like, what? Meat glue. Sounds just as disgusting as it truly is. Now, it has a fancy name. It's called microbial transglutaminase, and that's what it is, or MTG. Worst part about it, doesn't have to be on the label. No company, thanks America, no company has to put this particular ingredient on a label. Meat glue holds a whole bunch of stuff together, and so it doesn't have to be on the label. And research shows that it alters gut permeability, contributes to leaky gut, and causes inflammation reactions, especially in those with gluten sensitivity. Yay, meat glue. How gross is that? That's disgusting. And so you can Google, like, hey, what foods or whatever's contain meat glue. But I ended with this one to wrap things back around and say, listen, we have to be responsible for our own health. We cannot allow the gluten-free movement to take over because it's not making us healthy. And so if you're like, well, doc, what do I do? Let's lay into this, okay? If you want to be healthy, okay? If you want to be healthy, you don't eat gluten. Again, the corn, dairy, soy, sugars, you avoid those. But you also don't eat stuff that's labeled gluten-free. What is a true gluten-free diet? What is? Whole foods. Doc, I need a hamburger bun with my burger. No, you don't. Lettuce wrap it. Get that butter lettuce or bib lettuce, whatever they call it. Make a little burger bun or throw it in a bowl, make a burger bowl. You could throw some healthier condiments or spices on there if you want to. Smash it all up and eat it. It's delicious. It's the same thing. And you'll feel so much better afterwards. I guarantee it. That's how I eat my stuff, where I'll just grab the patty myself and just eat it. That's what my kids do too. Like little cavemen, cavewoman. Yum, num, num. Sage goes, num, num, num. I love being a dad. Side note. So avoid that stuff. When it comes to the whole food side of things, when we're talking about what do I eat or where do I find an alternative, even the word alternative is an excuse. It's a crutch. Like, I'm addicted to heroin, but what can I have that's close to heroin that's not really heroin? I'm addicted to cocaine. I don't want cocaine, but can I maybe get some Adderall? It's pretty close, right? Is that a little bit better? Off-label usage. When you say, what is a good alternative for a piece of bread? Lettuce. What's a gluten-free alternative for rice? Whole foods, fresh vegetables, fresh fruits, good meat. I mean, what is it that you want me to tell you? Because I'm going to tell you something, you're not going to want to hear it. And then when you're trying to get results in your health journey, you always have to do that inward self-reflection. Am I poisoning myself? Am I eating something that I shouldn't be eating? Am I actually emotionally addicted to this food? Am I chemically addicted to this food? Use this as a I'm mad kind of thing now, right? Because we talked about gluten, we talked about casein, right? We have casomorphines, we have gluteomorphines. They're morphine-like compounds that are addictive. So the foods by nature are addictive. They make you want to continue to eat it. Then they're emotional because a lot of the foods growing up have to do with cheese, right? Ham and cheese sandwich, okay? Or a hamburger with cheddar cheese on top, Swiss cheese. My dad loves Swiss cheese. My dad does cheese and onions, which is disgusting. I hate it. But that's one of the, he likes doing it. It stinks up the house when he does it, but he likes cheese and onions. It's an emotional thing. His dad used to do that, right? Or pizza. You're Italian. Hey, it's pizza night, right? Not that that's a bad Italian impression. I'm Sicilian, so I can do that. So the whole myth of an alternative needs to be eradicated, right? And if you're like, well, you know, doc, I'm working with you and I don't know how to be gluten-free because my husband doesn't want to be gluten-free, or my kids, I'm going to do this, but my kids aren't going to eat that. Your kids are going to eat what you serve them. Now, there is a certain level of difficulty with it, but you just need to kind of stand your ground for a little bit. And again, like when our kids are being a pain in the butt, it's because they don't want to eat their grilled chicken breast. They want to crush Brussels sprouts and some broccoli, or Brussels sprouts and some bacon, or they want to eat a whole bunch of green beans or steamed carrots. That's that's our issue. Right now, there's mornings where like we'll have oatmeal, he'll want to have like some peanut butter, oatmeal and peanut butter. And every once in a while, they'll have something that's going to contain not gluten, but something that's going to be like a little bit more tickling the fancy. Like we'll do pancakes that are gluten-free, dairy-free pancakes, basically vegan pancakes, egg replacer with flaxseed and all of that stuff. We just did those yesterday for his birthday. There is a lot that you're able to do. And if you set the precedent, you're the leader of the household. Whether you're man, woman, whatever the rules are, if you're cooking the food, people eat what you're going to cook. Give them about 2 weeks to adjust their taste buds to it and stick to it. And know that you're going to have to wear some extra armor because they're going to try to throw you off course as well. Because if it's 2 months, 3 months or so down the line, I've heard everything. Doc, so-and-so thinks I've lost too much weight. And they say I look bad. They start doing the personal digs, say I'm looking bad. Or they ask if I'm sick. Like, when can I stop this diet? I'm like, what are you you dropped inflammation and fat. Like, what? You're lean? You have lean muscle mass on you. You have more energy. You have abundant health. You're sleeping phenomenally. You don't have PCOS anymore. You're not dealing with infertility. You've only gained like 15, 20 pounds during pregnancy. You pop right back, post-pregnant. Like, what? Why are you letting somebody do that when they obviously don't care about your health? They just want it to be convenient for them. So we're trained, a lot of Americans have the fear of confrontation. It's easier to just give in. It's easier to just be passive. It's easier to say, oh, okay, I can do this if it's only 2 months. I can do this if it's only 30 days. I can do that if I can go back to eating it after. Right? Because my husband thinks I lost too much weight. Or vice versa. Husband starts losing a bunch of weight. Wife gets pissed off because wife is fat and overweight. And the husband looks fantastic. And wife's like, when are you going to be done with this? We can't go out to eat anymore. We can't do this. You always want the healthy food. And they just pick. And it's always the people closest to you. My mom, my dad says this. My loved one says this. Right? I can do that if we have that mentality going through this, you will never be successful long term. I pride myself on my patients being successful long term because I don't want them to have to come back to me to redo what we just did. The principles and things that we're teaching you is to be able to permeate through the entire relationship, through the entire family, not just your spouse, but your kids, your grandkids, your great grandkids. You're going to start passing down healthy recipes, right? Our parents did it. We have different recipes that we're like, hey, we do this. Megan does a great job doing some different swaps and stuff. Boom, tastes delicious. That's a new staple recipe. That's one that if we're going to pass down a recipe book, that's going to go in there. I've got all kinds of options. I mean, Jennifer's Way Kitchen is up there. It's a great cooking, baking, whatever alternative. It's anti-inflammatory. Everything we cook out of there is delicious. And we don't have to worry about even making any of those alternatives or any of those switches because the flours are healthy. Anything that goes into it is going to be good. It's going to be non-inflammatory, right? Or anti-inflammatory. So back to the whole gluten-free movement. What do? Clean out the pantry. Get really good at reading labels. The only thing that are really ever in bold on labels are your peanuts, milk, sometimes almonds will be on there, like the bold, like allergens. Okay. But you have to be able to see through it. And even still, if you eat something, I didn't agree with me. I don't really know. Remember, it might have meat glue in it. Yay. Thanks, America. Meat glue. It sounds delicious. Can I just get a tube of meat glue and eat that? Right? Yay. So when it comes to alternatives, eliminate the word alternative. Eliminate the word gluten-free. Add in healthy food. Add in whole foods. Add in a new lifestyle change. Not just for now, but forever. Your body will thank you. Your boss will thank you. Your patients or clients, if you got your own business, will thank you because you'll be less angry. You'll be less irritable. You'll be taking less sick days. Your immune system will be stronger. You'll be more fertile. You'll have better levels of testosterone, more balanced hormones. Your thyroid will function better. No brain fog, no achy joints. You can do pretty much everything if you choose to. So I'm going to end with that. Choose health, choose vitality, the choice is up to you. Talk to you next time.